Hello, I'm Scott Purcell with Blackland Prairie Bees in a video that's going to be a departure from my norm. Normally you find me in a bee suit at my beehives inspecting and talking about problems that I find there. I am real close to my beehive, and I'm going to finish this video with a little glimpse of the bees that have moved into a swarm trap I put on the tree in my front yard. But mostly, I want to talk to you about a frustration that I have this year. It's just driving me bonkers. And it is this. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Nice, dark honey. This was a fall harvest. It is delicious. I love the flavor of it. It has, many of our fall honeys have a richer, more complex flavor. Sometimes it's a little off-putting to some, and less of the light, sweet, floral flavors of the spring. This one in particular has strong suggestions of molasses. Now, for some people, if you're not a fan of molasses, that might be off-putting in itself. But I like molasses, and to have honey that tastes a little bit like molasses is the best of both worlds, because it takes a little bit of the edge off of what sometimes can be bitter in molasses, and just leaves the sweet goodness of it. And I love the flavor of this honey, but I can't eat it. I can't put it on stuff. I've tried to figure out how I can make use of it. I thought maybe I could use it in mead, or a friend of mine makes mead. And I've tried making kombucha. There's a variant of kombucha that, instead of using white sugar, uses honey and green tea. And I experimented with that. And none of those solve the fundamental problem of this honey, which is that it was made from snow-on-the-prairie flowers, and it bites. More on that in just a moment. So what is snow-on-the-prairie? Snow-on-the-prairie is a plant that is in central Texas. It's kind of a mixed blessing to beekeepers. It's a blessing because in some of our long, dry, hot summers, when the bees are finding nothing else with fresh nectar, it starts to bloom in the middle of the summer, and it provides nectar for them, and it keeps them going at a time when otherwise you may be faced with the choice, but either you feed the bees sugar syrup, which I try to avoid the need to do, or they're faced with starvation. So it saves the lives of many hives in central Texas. But what makes it a mixed blessing, maybe not a blessing, but a curse, is that the honey, if it's made from a substantial portion of nectar from the snow-on-the-prairie flower, it burns your throat. Now, this burn is a different type of burn than what you get in jalapenos or any hot pepper. With hot peppers, we know that the active ingredient that causes the burn is capsaicin. And we know how it works. What it's doing is stimulating the nerve endings to think that there's an irritation or a source of heat, something there that's causing problems. But when we look at the actual tissues, capsaicin doesn't cause tissue damage. It just stimulates nerve endings. Unfortunately, the mechanism by which snow-on-the-prairie causes that burning sensation appears to actually be damaging to the tissues. If you take the sap of the snow-on-the-prairie plant, break a branch open and rub the sap on your arm, it's going to give you a rash, at least for many people. And so I think that what's happening when I consume honey made from snow-on-the-prairie is it's actually irritating, inflaming tissues. And as we're learning more and more about health these days, we know that inflammation throughout our bodies is a contributing cause of many of the fundamental health problems that we have. How do I know this? Well, First of all, the burn is different. When you eat hot peppers, most of the burn is in your mouth, on your tongue, where there's lots of nerve endings. You might feel it at other points in the digestive process, which I won't go into in great detail. But most of the burn, most of the sensation is confined to your mouth because there's not a lot of nerve endings in the rest of your digestive tract. The burn in Snow on the Prairie, usually for most people, they'll say it starts at the back of the throat, not on the tongue. And that it burns in the back of the throat, it indicates that it's probably irritating the mucus producing tissues that are there to protect your tissues from irritants. And so when it burns, it's apparently getting through those mucus tissues. As with most issues with the quality of honey, uh, everything is on a scale. You may have honey that does this a little bit, and it might be fine. It might be within tolerance for you. Um, Although, if it's burning going down, I'd be really concerned for reasons that I'll explain in a moment, that it might be doing more harm to you than you know. But on a spectrum, you may have honey that's made with just a slight constituent from snow on the prairie flowers, or you may have honey that is mostly from snow on the prairie flowers. And I'm afraid that what I have sitting beside me has a very high degree of dependence on the snow on the prairie. Here's my story. First of all, I tasted the honey and I liked it, but I ran into other people who tried it, and they found that it was beyond their tolerance. So I wanted to figure out, is this causing harm? My research led me to conclude that probably it is. And so, because I'm on a diet that's been working really well for me, that's keeping my blood sugars low, trying to get healthy and fit, I don't want to be causing inflammation throughout my system. And so, I was hopeful that I could find a way other than direct consumption to make use of a sizable amount of this honey. So I have a friend who likes to make mead. And so I gave him some. I said, here's what it is. I gave him, fully disclosed to him everything I knew about it. Said, if you want to try it for a batch, see how it goes. We'll see if the fermentation or the dilution, because for mead, you dilute the sugar heavily with water, and then let it ferment. And so I thought maybe those two mechanisms would reduce the impact and make it tolerable. So he made a batch, and people that have tasted it are saying, no, it burns their throat. And as I've said before, my suspicion is that that's just the visible symptom and that it's actually doing more harm beyond that. So then I thought, well, I used to make kombucha, and I knew about a related ferment called June. It is a variant of kombucha, but it uses honey. And in that, you take merely 1 cup of honey, mix it into a gallon of sweet tea, in this case green tea, and let it ferment. And again, I was hoping that either the dilution or the fermentation would break down the damaging parts of Snow on the Prairie. And the kombucha got ready. I tasted it. I loved it. I took 1 bottle of it to work with me and shared it with others. And fortunately, they've not reported any ill effects. And I didn't immediately have any ill effects. I probably had 2 glasses of kombucha from that bottle. And then we broke into the second bottle. And in the second bottle, I took a glass right before I started a drive, about a 3-hour drive. By the time I arrived, I was having gastrointestinal symptoms. Um, I won't go into details about it, but it made for an unpleasant weekend. And at the end, when those symptoms abated somewhat, I noticed that there were many points when I would get a bump or something would press on my abdomen. Things were feeling tender, maybe irritated or inflamed, that didn't normally feel that way. And so I think that systematically, that glass of kombucha, building on whatever I had taken from the previous glass, just irritated my system to the point where it started to rebel. And once again, I am concerned about anything that's going to cause inflammation, not just at the point of ingestion, but throughout my body. And so I've decided that there really is nothing that I can do with this honey except for emergency feeding at times of the year when I expect the bees to consume everything I give them, and when I don't have a honey harvest near. So let's talk about the plant. Snow-on-the-Prairie is a common wildflower in central Texas. It's especially prone in cattle pastures because it thrives in areas where there's disturbed soil, and the hooves of the cattle will disturb the soil to allow it to get started. And because cows, maybe knowing better than I do what's good for me, they avoid this plant like the plague. So they'll leave it alone. It'll grow up in those fields, and as you're driving through central Texas, it's not uncommon to see fields where at a height of about 2 or 3 feet, you see just white flowers and white foliage across the pasture. Now, I'll show some pictures at this point, but you'll notice that the name of it is Euphorbia bicolor because the two colors in the leaves are that white and a light green that almost gets lost in the white when you're looking at it across the pasture. And so it's known as snow on the prairie because it makes the fields look white. So that's how you can recognize it. And again, you'll have seen some pictures in the background. But if you have significant amounts of this near your hives, it's going to be important to manage when you pull your honey. I thought, not having any prior experience with it, hearing what I was hearing from other beekeepers, that it was something that was a little bit of a nuisance, but you could harvest anyway. And so I harvested this honey in the fall. Part of the reason for that is it's a common advice for specifically beekeepers who use the lay-ins style hives, as I do, um, and especially for beekeepers in more northern states where the lay-ins hive is a really attractive option because of the depth of its frames. It's a common advice that leave your bees the honey that they gather in the spring to make sure they get through the summer well, and then harvest whatever they don't need going into winter. Take that for yourself. The problem is that if I harvest in the fall, they have stored up that snow on the prairie honey during the springtime. And so I pulled a lot of honey last fall that really was not usable to me. So what will I do going forward? I'm always going to harvest in early July at the latest, before the snow on the prairie really begins to bloom. So before I gave up on finding a use for this honey, I did some other investigations, and I investigated what were the mechanisms that might help to degrade the toxicity of snow on the prairie. And I saw that there was a chance that heat might do it, that UV radiation might do it, exposing it to sunlight, that oxidation might do it, or that well, physical weathering wouldn't really apply once you have honey made from it. Um, but the problem is that all of these things really can't be done without also damaging the honey. If you expose it to that much heat, it's going to break down, probably start to caramelize the sugar. It also, because the toxic elements are many different compounds, it's unpredictable. You might get part of it broken down, but not all of it. Um, Ultraviolet has limited penetration into honey, so it would only be the honey that is exposed at one time. And so none of these seemed reliably safe ways of breaking down the harmful content. Now, I do want to reiterate there is a difference between this type of spicy honey and what some beekeepers and an infused spicy honey that's made by infusing hot peppers. There are some risks to the process of infusion. If you soak hot peppers in your honey, you're changing the moisture content. You might introduce enough moisture that the honey is going to absorb moisture from the peppers if they're not dry. And in doing so, it might come to be at risk for fermentation. But if you are careful about all of those things, then infused honeys can be quite delightful and not harmful because they're based on the spiciness that's natural for capsaicin. But there are beekeepers who will take honey like this and label it as jalapeno honey, not meaning the jalapeno pepper, but just meaning that you have a burn like jalapenos, or spicy honey, or there may be other names that they'll give to it, and they'll market this without really an understanding of the difference in mechanisms, the difference in risk, and the risk of causing inflammation. So my recommendation are, if you're a honey consumer, if honey burns the back of your throat, avoid it. Maybe have a talk with the beekeeper. If it is an infused honey, you're probably okay, but the burn is probably going to be more in your mouth and on your tongue, like you would get from a hot pepper. But if you're a beekeeper, um, I would say, even if you don't mind the burn, even if you kind of like it or you have customers who kind of like it, I think the risk to our health is such that I would advise my fellow beekeepers not to market or sell or use uh, honey that has snow on the prairie in it. I just think it's an unwise practice. Now, I'm a big believer in the principle, I'll do me, you do you. But so I'm not going to condemn anyone who chooses not to follow that advice. But that is my advice, and I would certainly not be offering more of this honey for sale myself. So what can we do to mitigate the risk? I already talked about the timing of our honey harvest. You may have a choice in the placement of your hives, selecting locations that don't have snow on the prairie nearby. Um, there might be a solution in blending honey, uh, but it seems to me that the offending substance is so robust that because we've diluted this down to 1 cup per gallon of a beverage, and the dilution has not helped, I would say the risk of blending is that you take perfectly good honey and spoil it with snow on the prairie. Um, so the other option would be consumer education and labeling. If I ever were going to offer this to someone, I would want to make sure that they are fully informed of what's happening. For consumers, I think you should just be aware that this exists and sample honey cautiously. If it causes a burn, avoid it. And buy your honey. This is always every beekeeper will recommend this. Buy your honey from someone you know. That's the way you know what you're getting. And if you find a beekeeper who's willing to talk honestly about this as a problem, you can know that you can trust them. I do think it would be wise for our state to get involved in labeling requirements. I don't think you should be permitted to label this as hot honey or jalapeno honey. I think you'd want to label it clearly that it contains snow on the prairie nectar. Um, and I think labeling is an area in Texas legislation that probably could stand to be beefed up a little bit. because right now, especially in the supermarkets, they may offer local honey, and you don't know. All you know is that it may be packaged or repackaged or relabeled locally. You don't know where the honey actually originated from. You also there's no trustworthy way to know for sure that it hasn't been adulterated, other than there is a brand called Real Texas Honey, where beekeepers can get certified that they are offering real Texas honey. I recommend that program because I'm not a large scale honey producer. I haven't felt the need to do that um, because my customers right now, they know me and they know they can ask me about how I produce my honey. Um, so that's the issue. I wanted to let you know, as beekeepers, I wanted to give you some counsel about when to harvest in Central Texas and let you know about the plant. And as consumers, I wanted you to know that this exists. So thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Click notifications so you'll be aware when I produce new content. There will be more coming. I'm about to go kill some queens so I can replace them next week. And I may videotape that. And I'm also going to have more discussions about how to deal with the aggressive hives. My last video, probably it will be the last by the time I get this produced, showed the temperament of a couple of my docile hives. And you can look back at my back catalog and see some of the footage from my more aggressive hives. There's a substantial difference. That's all for now. Oh, I am going to close with a video of the bees in my swarm trap in my front yard. Thanks for watching.